Welcome to Sacred Conversations, a place where Dr. Nicole Dolan and I, Robin Bethel, along with a myriad of guests, explore some of the sacred threads and wholeness of life, held within the light and within the dark, held within the immensity. Thank you for being with us. In this episode, Nicole and I revisit our earlier conversation on wholeness and transformation, which touched on how we hold these ideas and some of the language around them. I primarily return to language we hear over and over in psycho-spiritual spaces, doing the inner work, which is often used to generally describe moving through difficult inner places in ways that lead to transformation. To me, this phrase often feels fitting, like when people seek more structured containers or deliberate processes that help them heal and grow in beautiful ways. But so often it's used to describe any time we bring our attention and presence within in a way that's transformative and often hard. And to me, that across-the-board use feels limiting and imbalanced because it doesn't feel like it accurately reflects the essence of another path of inner alchemy, one that doesn't involve much of a defined container at all, and instead brings transmutation more through a deep, sustained connection to the fullness of our inner experience and all its light and dark, through opening and softening into the life that meets us, and feeling the depths of what is ours to feel. For me, this more organic space of inner transformation rises in large part from our feminine energy, which is held in all genders. It flows so much from being rather than doing. And so in this episode, I share some of the dissonance I feel in describing this sort of path, no matter how difficult it can be, with the language of action and productivity, with language more aligned with our masculine energy, held in all genders, like when we call it inner work. Nicole brings her own nuanced perspective here, informed by her work as a trauma survivor and a trauma therapist, which then brings us into what she wanted to add to our conversation on wholeness and what is currently emerging and richly alive for her right now. The idea of wholeness as a psycho-spiritual nervous system field that speaks to our capacity to hold all the things together. This Part 2 episode is a short, messy footnote to the first, and while nothing gets fully smoothed out or perfectly explained, even with my lengthy intro, we were glad to return to wade in the complexity, and we hope you enjoy listening. Hi, Nicole.
Hey, Robin.
Hi. We're going to just do a really short session episode today, bringing a part 2 to our earlier conversation on wholeness and transformation, where we each just spoke in messy fashion, to maybe some of the language that we use around these things or just how we hold them. And we left that conversation with both of us feeling like, oh, we didn't say this one thing, we didn't express this quite right. And so we're going to do just a super short revisiting and just drop in.
Okay, sounds good.
And I think I'll go first and just speak to what I wanted to add, which I feel like in our last conversation, first, when I was talking about paths of transformation, and I was talking a lot about opening into life, I want to clarify just as one tiny side note. Now, months later, well, no one will remember what I said in the first place, but still, just so it said, like when I talk about opening into life, I realized in listening back, I hardly at all used the word emotion or feeling, which to me is kind of like the crux of what I mean in many ways. But I think for me, sometimes I'm just so like in the shorthand of myself and how I speak about things that I don't it's just assumed for me when I'm talking about opening into life. What I'm meaning is like not resisting, allowing everything to meet me so fully. But I think that could almost sound like in a way where it's just like so mellow, or you're just so accepting that it's like very equanimous, if that would be the word, but it's not often at all. I feel like the last, especially 7 years, like, in a way, it's like a crucible of, like, here and then here and, like, another and this, and it's, like, very intense emotionally. And when I talk of opening into life, I mean, like, I do bring a lot of non-resistance just kind of inherently, and, like, a lot of trust, but it's often, like, wildly emotional, with a lot of sadness and things like that. And so by allowing an opening in that way, a lot of that is difficult, and, like, it's in allowing yourself to feel the very depths of all of what you need to feel, what is yours to feel, what's being asked to be felt, and that's where I feel like that alchemy comes in. So I just wanted to clarify, again, it might be confusing because I'm referencing something from a while back, but I realized, oh my gosh, I don't even speak to the feeling piece as much because for me, it's just so bound up in that language of opening to life. But I feel like that's that alchemy. It's not through opening just to what's beautiful and easy. Like often it's really through feeling the fullness of all that is difficult that's asking to be felt. So I wanted to clarify that. And then the other thing in this little footnote of an episode is we talked a little bit about the language around paths of transformation and like doing the work. And this is something that I feel like it's so delicate for me in one way because most people who speak about the inner experience, I don't know about most, but like at least half of them, like who speak about it in a way that resonates, like where we're in this shared world of continual inner alchemy. They use certain language, and I totally know what it's referring to because it's the way that I live as well. But I do feel like I need to add a note on this language of the work because I feel like I think in spiritual spaces, people who are kind of there's a lot of people who deliberately go into these containers with it and they always use that language. And so I just want to offer like another vantage point. So I think that in some cases we talked about like, okay, that's more the hero's journey. That is more of a masculine energy journey. Like you're seeking a practitioner, you're scheduling it, you're you're doing this deliberate, it is like a work, right? You're like, here's the program, here's the process, here's what I'm stepping into consciously, and I'm doing it because I want to do this inner work. So I feel like that use of the term like really aligns with what it is, um, but definitely not the only path because I feel like if you just open so fully, so deeply, so intricately into the life meeting you, then you're doing the same thing, right? But in order to do that, you have to have the capacity to feel all your emotions, right? And not be overwhelmed with your nervous system and stuff. So sometimes there's people aren't always able to just instantly do that, right? Or they might not want to. But I feel like it's another way of being that allows the inner alchemy if you're just so present and opening into your life as it unfolds. And then I feel like people who are doing more of like the inner work by seeking a guide, something that's on their schedule, right? Like once a week I do this, once a week I do that. Ultimately, probably in most cases, the goal would be to then move through their life integrating what they learned there and those capacities that they achieved there just fully through everything, right? To where maybe they are just unfolding into their life in a way where everything is felt most of the time. Everything is integrated in that way. But still, even if people are doing this where like the inner work is really a matter of like feeling everything fully that's theirs to feel and moving with that, it's still called the inner work so often. And to me, I wish that it wasn't always unilaterally referred to in those spaces that way without anything else offered because
It feels to me what a lot of this inner work is bringing someone to is a capacity to just be more fully with their emotions and to be more in a state of being, like very fully in being and all the fullness that that entails. And yet the language that we're throwing over it is the language of doing. It's like, to me, the work, the inner work is like such, it evokes like doing, it evokes like this capitalistic productivity stuff,
Mm.
you know? And
Mm.
so I think sometimes, like, well, it is more work. It's like something that can be on a checklist. It's like I go see this person. And again, like with so much respect, this is like beauty. Like it's beauty in the world that these paths are here. So many guides and healers, and it's necessary. And so I think it makes sense a little more to use that language. Like it's this inner work, it's this inner program, it's a deliberate container that's being sought after and someone to bring you through. But I think ultimately, the goal is probably to be able to just bring these ways of being more into all of life without always needing to seek containers that can be scheduled on your iCalendar or whatnot, and yet the language is still doing the inner work where it's just going through the hard things that to me feel like it's not work. It's hard, but it's just like aliveness. It's like the more fully you are just alive and alive to like all the textures of the world, like the joy and the pain and all of those different feelings, like the more you let yourself just be so connected to all of those, it's just aliveness. And so to me, even though it's hard, like the pieces of aliveness that are deep suffering and like rip your heart out, calling it work feels so weird to me because it's just like a piece of being fully alive. And it's not like, so I don't, it just feels so odd to me to cast that in the lens of you're doing work. It's kind of like, it feels like it's taking something that's innately like this feminine energy, again, feminine energy in men, women, like gender doesn't matter, but it is this energy of just that life force and being and being with feeling. And often for people to tap into that, they have to release more of the doing and they have to be comfortable with just that space of being. And then the language that we always put on it often is the language of productivity. And I'm just like, oh, why is it always used? And again, it fits a lot of the time, and, like, even when I feel it doesn't quite fit, it still is such this technical detail, and I, like, adore so many of the people that use that language and respect them so much, but I just feel this need to mention this other way of thinking about it because to me, it feels so counterintuitive to take the language of action and doing and productivity and use that to brand this inner experience, which is really the opposite. And so
Mm.
I felt I needed to add that.
Mm. Mhm.
I don't mean to, like, I really, really don't mean to criticize any language that feels resonant to people to use. Like, I want to be so clear on that. I just want to offer one other thought because it's how I hold it. And I just think the language that we use around things, I think it can guide us a little bit. And so I just really want to offer that inner transformation doesn't always have to look like I'm undergoing this program, I'm undergoing this process or these steps. Sometimes that's a necessary part and it's beautiful. And sometimes, really, the essence of that is just opening so deeply into life. And if you're doing it in that way, this very organic way of just letting your transformation be guided by your life and opening really deeply into it, I feel like you're just in this space of so much aliveness. And aliveness includes all the things. And to me, when we brand a piece of those things, the hard stuff, we brand the sorrow and the suffering, all of that. When we take that and because it's harder, then call it then doing inner work by feeling those hard things. To me, it feels like segmenting up our aliveness rather than just being like, I'm opening to all of it and I'm feeling all of it. And the hard stuff then doesn't have its own title as work. It's just part of being so fully alive. All right, so that's my soapbox. I just want to add that into the mix because I have a lot of thoughts around it. So,
Mhm. Well, as I'm listening to you, I'm having a couple of things happen. And I appreciate our circling back to this for multiple reasons. And so, one of the things that's happening is I'm really listening to you and I'm saying, I feel like you may have a sacred offering in this over time. It might be something that you really have to bring to others when you say like, hey, like what if we looked at it this way, or what if we really held this process this way? So I think that just intuitively it feels like there may be something that's really forming for you that becomes offering for others. And the other thing that's happening for me, and I appreciate, I just love the idea of like holding complexity right now
yeah.
and holding light and dark, as we often speak about, because as a depth psychologist and a trauma, specialist or therapist, whatever you want to call me, I don't like all the labels, but it's like, holy shit, it is work, you know? So it's and I can feel like the trauma survivor in me too, being like, oh my gosh, but I've had to work so hard, you know?
Mhm.
And so just paying attention to like all of those, they're deeply integrated parts at this point. No one's gonna like stand up and need to take a stand or anything, but I can
Right.
experience them there, you know?
Mhm.
And so yeah, it's interesting. And I think I wouldn't want to label it, but something I did make a note of is I don't want to overgeneralize it when I say this, but almost like holding it as like healing versus openness, which I don't mean that like healing and opening, healing or opening. I'm going to be really careful there how I try to explain that. But healing work to me is work. Like it's hard. It's real hard. I'm somebody who has experienced and healed through PTSD.
Mhm.
Um, I'm somebody who's personally and also professionally, of course. And that's not easy. And that's not about opening to life and letting life meet me. That's about, feeling feelings for sure, like allowing
Mhm.
feelings that were not able to be present in the moment of trauma because I wouldn't have been safe to then come through as part of healing, but it did not come through opening. It did not come from welcoming, it came through trauma work and also really beautiful holding and guidance. And so there's a part of me that, when we recorded the first episode, I did kind of shapeshift a little and went along with you. And then afterwards I was like, wait, like there is a part of me that does want to call it work. When I think of inner work as something else you spoke to is capacity to feel, what I want to say and what I would add to the conversation and where my work is going as psychologist, mother, and philosopher is into the realm of wholeness over healing, fragmentation into integration, as we've mentioned. And part of that is very specifically understanding the nervous system as not just biological, but a psycho-spiritual field, organ, whatever you want to call it. Everything is energy. Energy is everything. So whatever you want to call it. But let's just
Mhm.
say field for now. Let's say nervous system as psycho-spiritual field, right? There's a physical body, there's an astral body. We won't get into it. But I'm really holding this, and I come back to your comment about capacity to feel, because I believe, and what I would say is you have to do, if you're a trauma survivor, which I kind of, in my own bias, believe everybody is. But if you're a significant trauma survivor, let's say, like somebody has pulled you in and called you to do work that you didn't want to do, right? You didn't want to show up for it hurts. Um, if that is the case, then I really believe that you have to do the work in order to get to the place where you can open. And part of doing that work is increasing your capacity to feel. So
Right.
many of us are shut down. We're
Yeah.
stuck by we're stuck in flight, we're stuck in freeze,
Yeah.
fawn, whatever. And also we lack the capacity to hold space for all things. So that's a really hard concept to try and describe, but to just to say it simply, as simple as I can, let me just see what comes through. I'm going to ask for guidance on this one. What I'm being shown is, so like we talk about like holding light and dark. I'm being shown complexity, right? There are, we all have shadow. We all have parts of self that, are beautiful and wonderful and, perfection parts and whatnot. And then we also have shadow parts that we really need to do deeper work with and integrate. And the complexity that I'm kind of seeing is like we're so taught right now to heal in fragmentation. Like we're taught to like get rid of that part or get rid of depression, get rid of anxiety, get rid of certain wounds, like leave partners who have certain injuries, like don't date emotionally unavailable men or women. So I'm being shown like relationship complexity as an example of when we have, and of course, you have to be safe in these situations, so there's certain guidelines and boundaries, but there's also places that you can get to if you can build your capacity to hold space for people's light and their darkness. And there's also space you can get to when you can hold space for even the mundane daily life, like we've talked about, to be extraordinarily difficult, but then have really beautiful moments. Like it sounds so simple because it's like, well, of course. But the truth is that most of us don't have the capacity to, in our nervous systems, in our field, to be able to hold all things as equal in a sense. And if you take that and apply that globally speaking, you can see it, right? The big split that we are in,
Mhm.
right? We don't have the capacity when we're sitting with somebody who feels differently than we do to hold both this truth and this truth. And so I really am holding on to this idea of nervous system as psychospiritual and the capacity to be able to hold all truths, all perspective, all wisdom, all beauty, all dark, all light, all of it, all the things, right? To your point. But I believe where we differ is those who have walked, through very traumatic terrain have to do work in order to be able to get themselves to a place where they can open and they can even open themselves, even connection to, whatever their own spiritual beliefs, experiences are, intuition. I really believe that that comes online after we have done what I would consider
Yeah.
work. The thing I want to say about that is, and this is where I think your sacred offering is, Robin. We've always talked about your deep okayness and how you have that gift in the world. And I think that there's something that you're speaking to that's hugely valuable too. And we're kind of just holding, and I'm kind of loving that about this little short episode right now, is like we're holding the light and the dark. We're holding the complexity. And it's not to say that yours is all light and mine's all dark. It's mine's light and dark too, and yours is light and dark too. But we're holding deep complexity even in what we're holding here together.
Yeah. And I do feel the need to reiterate, though, too, that I see the multiple ways. I see so many ways that are generally labeled work, right? And those being beautiful aspects as well. And that's kind of, I think, what you're saying more like if people have specific healing work that they need to do, most often it's going to be something that's kind of like that, more that hero's journey process. that healing in a way that opens up, like it lets you release certain things, it lets you build your capacity, nervous system work. I think that's amazing and so good. And that's such an important piece of being able to then feel all the things, right? Like I know that. So I think there's so much that the label work or inner work does fit more for what it is, like a conscious task to work with this, right? But I feel like even then, once someone comes from that, then someone goes through, their own crucible season and they're just processing it. Like as you process life through being with it, and the language of doing the inner work is still often used just to reflect being present with the hard emotional things. It's also used in that way. Like if you're just present with all of the darkness, it's often then called you're like still doing inner work. The term is still used over just feeling the hard emotions,
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, okay, in that layer. So, yeah. So it's like these multi-layered things. It's like, I'm with you in that is so valuable in places where the word work to me still resonates.
Mhm.
And then there's the space where, but you can also have inner transformation in different ways. But again, now you're speaking to if you already have certain capacities to kind of move through those on your own. And then it's like taking it to the other level too. So it is kind of confusing to talk about. And like I hear your your space. I said everything that I felt the need to say here. And Nicole actually, in responding to that, shared what she wanted to share about wholeness, I think.
I would say, yeah, just as far as wholeness being, I mean, yeah, if we wanted to get into wholeness more, I'd probably need more space and time for it. But I would just say the part that I shared about wholeness for me is like really healing at the nervous system level.
Mhm.
Is It's not necessarily, I think we heal in a lot of fragmentation these days, meaning like we look at like the depression, we look at the symptom, we look at the trauma, and we say, okay, I need to, like new therapists, I work with new therapists and I teach them, and so to no fault of their own, but they usually come online and say like, oh, I need to find out what happened to this person so I can like
Mhm.
reach it out and heal it, and then we can. And it's not necessarily about that. I teach them, right? It's like their trauma will be showing up in their lives now, today, like their symptoms will be right in front of you. But it's not, but where I'm going now to come away from that is just to say, like, I think that, for a long time, my field has really looked at healing, a fragment, like a piece of
Mhm.
the story. And so as we're coming into this, place of great integration where people are really working with like mind, body, and soul, it's like, well, what does that mean once again, right? And so for me as depth psychologist, I feel like I know how to work with soul in many ways, but what's coming online for me now is really working not just with nervous system as body, but as almost like akashic record, of place that holds not only everything that's ever happened in your lifetime, but all your other lifetimes and your ancestors' lifetimes. And so there is a lot of information and wounding in the field that also has to get paid attention to. And so wholeness for me also becomes that. It becomes healing and integration over like healing a fragmented part of self.
I love that. And how amazing would it be if there was like a rise in therapy, in psychotherapy work that brought the nervous system in. So you go see one person and they kind of hold that piece of the journey as well. I think
Well,
that's
and
really
they do polyvagal and Bessel van der Kolk, like all that. Yeah. We might have to talk about it more. So
okay.
we'll see.
Yeah, okay, I know you need to go, but like just as one person where it's always brought in. Okay, well, that's enough for today. Here's our footnote, Helter
Okay.
Skelter episode. And okay, bye, Nicole.
Bye.
Bye. I'll see you later.
Thank you for being with us today.
If you feel called, follow the podcast wherever you listen and connect with us on Instagram or YouTube at sacred.conversations.podcast. And most of all, may you keep opening to yourself, to the mystery, and to the story within you that's still being written.